Hello and welcome to the Answer Podcast. My name is Paweł Burza, and as always, I am joined by
Sebastian Kalemba, game director for Polaris.
And today we have a very interesting episode coming to you because we have voice actresses coming in. So these are not guests that work with us every day on our titles here in the studio, but they work with us because they bring our characters to life. We have Jane Perry and Minji Chang, who took on the voices of both Rogue and Songbird. And it's going to be an incredible discussion because one of them super experienced with a lot of games under her belt and a BAFTA award, which speaks for itself. And the other bringing in a fresh perspective, doing her first character. And what a character, because it's Songbird. So I can't wait for this one. Let's get started.
Let's do this.
So Jane Perry, Minji Chang, welcome to the Answer Podcast. Our first guest, like we said in the intro, from outside CDPR, but I feel like you're family because you take on the voices of incredible characters, very developed characters in Cyberpunk 2077 and Phantom Liberty. So the voice of Rogue and the voice of Songbird from the expansion. And we always kind of start with Sebastian with like a big picture.
Big question, yeah.
Big question that we dissect and
more
we
like
get into.
Holistic approach
Exactly.
to things, yeah.
So the question is, why voice acting and why voice acting for video games? Like when did you get into that?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for saying we're like family. That's so meaningful, I think, to voice actors in games because we feel like we're family, but in a very sort of detached way because we very rarely have the chance to meet people like you, developers who are sort of working on the other side of the microphone. Yeah. So thank you so much for having us here
Our
today.
pleasure.
Oh,
Yeah,
Our pleasure.
It's been so fun.
Yeah.
This is so fun.
We are
total-
super excited. So really nice having you here.
Thank you. We're so excited too. And to answer your question, why voice acting and why acting specifically in games? Well, to be honest, when I first got into games, it's when I moved to the UK from Canada, and I was just a jobbing actor. I had an agent, for film and TV and theater, and I had a voice agent, and my voice agent just sent me an audition one day, and I was like, okay, I'll go to that.
I'll try it.
Yeah, I'll try it. I'll go. And it was for a game, and I managed to get cast, and which was lovely. And this is the sort of start of my career in games. But I think what started to happen was I recognized a kind of potential in it that I hadn't really experienced elsewhere. So the thing is, when you act in film and TV, it's interesting and exciting, and you meet interesting people and all that sort of thing. But the storytelling tends to be a little bit disjointed in my experience, just because of the way it's created. Whereas in theater, it's your experience of your own character is quite connected in a way, because it's it happens in sequence, and you spend a long time also with that character because you have rehearsals, and games started to sort of mirror that in a way, because potentially you can spend quite a bit of time with a character. You can spend quite a bit of time with the creative team from the developers, for example, the people you're working with in the studio and your performance director. And then what I also started to notice is when I'm on a film set, I get overwhelmed. There's so much stimulation. Yeah. There's the lights, there's sound, there's millions of people. And I would sometimes just feel a little bit like, wow, my brain is going to explode here. There's just so much going on. But in the sound booth, it's just you and the microphone and what's going on in your head, and then the information you're receiving in your
I feel like it
headphones.
makes it more difficult, to be honest.
Well, I think for me, and maybe this is just the way my brain works, it allowed me to suddenly get into the zone, or I could just get into the state of flow and receive what was being told to me about the character. And it's like that information sort of filtered in through my ears, and then it blossomed in my imagination. And I could really just use what was coming into my imagination, almost like my own little movie cinema, and just act according to that. And that for me was a kind of revelation. And I think really what happened is I started to develop the skills that that a game actor needs, which is really to work with your imagination, to be in the present moment, to listen really carefully to the information that's being given to you. Because what I'm learning about talking with game developers is that there's a lot of sort of deconstruction that's going on. We're incredibly reliant. You and I were talking about this earlier. We're incredibly reliant on each other's work to inform our own work. Yeah. So we're very dependent on each other. And what does that do? It creates connection, a real deep, profound connection.
Yeah. It brings it together into a whole picture.
It really does. Yeah. And I'll stop blathering on in a moment. But all of which to say that was all a revelation to me. And it is the thing I love the most about working in games.
So it's all about also personal preferences, because I remember we were talking also about motion capture, and some actors prefer to actually act on set in a mocap where there are no cameras, you have a different suit, but they can imagine the world around them, and actually it's helpful for the performance. Well, that's super interesting perspective. I love it.
I mean, my perspective, I've been learning so much, by the way, being here, meeting all of you, this whole process. I'm shared, this is my first video game ever, so meeting Jane and then meeting Alex as well, and listening to them share their experiences from their many different projects. And I did my research and I listened to their work. I was like, oh my God. Yeah. Talk about intimidation. Just to be, it's so awe-inspiring to have that little glimpse that it was a large glimpse, but to do Cyberpunk in a major character the way that I did was being thrown into a rushing river and having to learn every minute on the job of how to do this. And my background in voiceover has been predominantly, if not all, commercial. And that's been great. And it's taught me a whole different skill set beyond film and TV, which even that, it's not very extensive. I've been acting on the side of many different projects and career choices that I've had. And now it's become the forefront of being an actor. So even that, I feel like I have a very limited scope, a lot of independent projects and great fun, but giant TV sets and stuff. I've only been on 2 maybe. And that was chaotic. When you're saying this stimuli, I was like, oh my God, this is insane. But definitely a different world and really, really, I love it. I personally love TV and film. I love the dynamic element and you get into a really different headspace. Your every part of you is your instrument from the glances that you do. The way you look at someone, that's part of your performance. And then with voice acting, it's all here. And then with commercial acting, it's I get tiny phrases. Very rarely do you have an extensive script. I have sometimes my job is to do it one tagline and I'll have 8 words and I have to derive 1,000 meanings out of 8 words. And have that communicate an emotion or a message. So that was a different training. So when I went into Cyberpunk, I was like, oh God, it was so challenging, but so fun to have a lot more to play with. And like Jane was saying, just you really have to use every bit of your imagination to fill in all the gaps. And then on top of that, to be, for me, such a noob and to know nothing about Cyberpunk, because I found out about it when I got booked. My first session, I still didn't know what game I was in. So you're really working with little and you have to kind of make the most of it, which was really fun, really challenging. Once I figured out what it was, I was like, oh my God, I cannot mess this up. I cannot fail. But I think it challenged me to step up to the plate and really kind of you kind of have to surrender a little bit. I think that's what I experienced of just trust the process, trust yourself that there's no perfect way. They hired you for a reason. Just be free. Just play. Who is Songbird? They don't have it. They hired you to create her. Right. So it was really overwhelming, but then also really liberating. And I was like, okay, let's have fun. And they can guide me. And like you said, it's a very collaborative experience. Yeah. Very collaborative, very you have to trust each other and work with what you have. And when they show me little bits of what the video game was, it was all just information. Be like, okay, oh wow, she's a badass. Okay, I got to bring it down. I got to kind of be in my body a little bit more. She's not, I have a lot of personality traits that are similar to her and different, and all of that. It was just such a whirlwind. Like when I look back on it, I was like, did that really happen? Because
there's evidence.
It did happen.
Yeah.
It was so fun. So this is a whole new world for me. And I'm just leaning into it.
Nice.
So why video gaming? I don't know. I feel like it chose me, and so now I'm gonna go with it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's good to see on social media because you're very active there to kind of see like you're sharing all the fan arts of Songbird and stuff like that. It's really good to see. It's like you're really into the character,
living the character.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
And I think it's also something that because Sebastian, like you were animation director and now you're the game director for Polaris, but also like we were talking about animation, and the fact is that you fall in love with these characters, they become part of you, and it's very hard to let go of this character. It's the same for an animator, but it's also the same for a voice actress. Right?
Yeah. And actually, what is really cool is that you get some bio from the story first. You know what is the story about at first, but we kind of together co-developing the character in the process. So also animators are like finding out these acting gestures, those nuances and for the character together with you, based very often on the video that you provide, which is amazing because this is all about creative process, right? Which is a little bit chaotic, but it's kind of controllable chaos, and I really love it. And referring to what you said before, and I'm really wondering what you're gonna say, because you said it was some kind of a revelation, and you said about kind of developing the character. You had more space to develop this character. You kind of zoning there in the booth, and actually, it makes you a bit more mindful when it comes to the way you deliver the line, how you deliver it, the overall rhythm, and actually you probably found out that, oh my God, I have more space for this creativity because the boundaries were not limiting you that much, right? And I'm wondering what you can tell us regarding how you set the boundaries for yourself when it comes to the developing the character. Do you set yourself some limits when it comes to the emotions or the performance you provide? If you can say more about your approach to developing the character with your voice. I know it's open question, and it's broad.
That's a great question. Do you have thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking about, you mentioned the word limits,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. I mean, I think what happens in the voice booth is you sort of have to find freedom in structure. So you've got this sort of, there are limits, right? You've only got your voice, for example. You don't have your body, or you can't tell your story in any other way but your voice. So that's a limit right there. And then you have to find freedom in that. And I think also there was another point I wanted to make that, another limit, I think, which is a really interesting one that actors have to sort of balance out in video games in particular, is the real estate of a video game is 20, 30, 40 hours in contrast to a 2-hour film or maybe a 6-part TV series. So your character is such a great example of this. She has these huge moments and emotional arcs and regret and memory and loss and all these things, and all of these characters do. And so as an actor, you kind of want to like jump into that and really commit to it and like go for it and cry and scream and do all the things that you would do if you were in those situations. But you have to keep in mind the fact that might be fatiguing for the player to be on the receiving end of so much emotional intensity. So then this big emotion, and us actors, I think we just love to express all of that stuff. We have to sort of moderate it a little bit to accommodate, how many hours the player is going to be with not only our emotion, but that of everybody in the game and the story itself. And that's kind of a weird thing to do. It's because you want to fully commit to the story and to the character, but then just bring it back a little bit. So,
See, I'm learning right now. I didn't think of that. That's what a pro. I mean, come on, BAFTA winner. Come on.
We'll get to that. Don't worry.
This is a master class. I'm sorry. I'm just learning in real time right now. I'm taking notes in my head.
Well, this is also something that was taught to me by my performance directors who would just sort of say, they would explain that to me.
Wow.
And now I think about that one. So I will choose, I will choose, okay, this is a moment where I am going to let it rip. I'm going to let it
because
go.
there are these like epic moments
Yeah.
that are supposed to stay in the heads of gamers when they're playing. And there are moments where you want to make your character really stand out and you want those emotions to pour through. And it's animation, it's music, but it's also voice acting, which is very important because it sets you in that place and it actually evokes those feelings within you, which makes it so really like you consume that. It's very appealing.
Very.
I think the technical part of the limitations that are to add to what Jane was saying, what I found challenging in terms, okay, so a video game versus like a commercial. Commercials usually I'm like hired to play a friendly neighbor or a professional that's going to tell you about cloud computing, but, and then, which is great. I mean, we wouldn't have a game if cloud computing didn't exist. But then when I'm doing a character and say, for example, the physicality of I'm rolling my eyes at something, and in regular life, I'm like, if I'm scoffing at something, it's like, oh my God, don't even, like, I'll turn my head and be like, I don't want to think about that. That's what I would do if it was like a camera and I have a mic on me and I don't, but in voice acting, I have to stay
right
here and communicate the same brushing off. And for me, I found that a bit challenging because now I'm in a medium where I can be more charactery and more emotive, but then I still technically have to like stay here to not get. And I was sharing a story yesterday of my hat. I kept wearing a baseball cap because I felt like it started to. I just showed up to the session with my hat, and usually I'd take it off, but then it fed my Songbird vibe. So I just wear the hat and I kind of be in this like brooding teenager mode. And then I found that it kept hitting the mic, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, maybe you should lose the hat. And I was like, okay, but it like changes the character.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Stuff like that was like definitely teaching me limitations or what fed the character, what helped me understand. Like I didn't realize again until multiple sessions. I was like, oh, I like the hat. It kind of gives me this feeling of coveredness and that I'm like, I got, I'm like, I don't want to be seen by everybody. That kind of fed that. And the more I got to understand the story, because it did take me a second to click into all that was happening and why. And I really appreciate our performance directors. Pierce was so patient with me to continue. Same storyline, just repeating it 20 times for me to like really click in. And the more lines I did, I understood. So that helped me develop her. Because again, we have to record so many lines in a session. We got to move. And again, I'm self-conscious. I don't want to have to take 20 takes on one line. I want to be able to deliver what they need and then move on to the next. Because I have a producer mindset. So I'm like, time is money, people. Like, you guys hired me to do a job. My job is to deliver the line you need and not take 50 takes for it. Because you guys have a schedule and I want to be of service to the developers, animators, and not lose that. So it was a lot of things to...
We appreciate this.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Because I was thank you for hiring me. I want to do a good job. So it's that collaborative mindset that I think it was challenging to then figure her out quickly and then figure out my mechanisms of how to click into her. And so every time we would do the level set at the top of every session, it was the same line. It's like, V, I know you, you don't know me. I can save your life. Like there are these lines that it just became a rhythm, and I was like, okay, I'm in. Because once you step out of the booth, you're back in regular life and doing your emails, getting gas, whatever. And now I'm like,
gonna save you to the gas. What did you say? What did you say? Oh, sorry,
ma'am. What?
I wasn't the writer.
I'm sorry, man. I want regular gas. Forget it. Never mind. Like I'm literally at Costco the next hour. Getting gas. So it was things like that would help me click in. The limitations there, like I'm maybe obnoxiously positive in certain ways of like, I have to treat every challenge as an opportunity and say, okay, don't have time. I don't remember what the last storyline was, but give it to me. And then I'll execute, and it turns
we'll
into
jump
that.
into the character.
Yeah.
How hard is it to create the voice for a character? Like how much time do you need to develop your character and work and kind of like do the prep work? Because I know there is a lot of prep work too. Okay. This is like, you saw the text, you maybe saw a little bit of the synopsis of the story, but then you create the voice, you create how the character will pretty much speak. So how much time do you need for that? Is it quick? Is it sometimes more of a collaborative in the booth, or do you do it like before you get into the booth?
That's more for you.
Well, I think it's
I think it's for both of you. I think it's for both of you.
definitely. Yeah. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about that because this is this is, I guess, what you might call actors' process. Like, how do you get into character? What is your specific process for doing your work? And maybe everybody is a bit different in a way, but for me, it's a little bit of both. I will say that most of it happens in the moment in the voice booth. Mm-hmm. And I was speaking yesterday about how one of my favorite moments in the whole process is when we take that time to find the voice. I find that super, super exciting because you're being tossed lots of ideas and how about this? And it's like just turning the dials a little bit and, you're spinning this down, that down, figuring it all out. And then you find it and everybody's like, there it is. And it's like she arrives and everybody knows it. Yeah. That moment is very recognizable. So I think in terms of preparation and research and such before you go in the booth, genre is so important. So obviously Cyberpunk, this dystopian kind of universe, our environment, the world we live in, it affects, how we sound, how we communicate and who we are in the world. And so that has to come through the voice.
Those are like limits, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's very different than, for example, Hitman or a game like Fable or, whatever. And then I think the other prep is, and this sounds a little bit like a cop-out, but there isn't much to prep because we don't get material in advance. So whenever I talk about prep for a game, I go way, way back to, well, are you an actor? Are you taking your acting classes? Are you good at improv? Are you good at listening? Can you cold read? Mm-hmm. This is the prep really that a games actor needs to do. And so that really is about your skill base as an actor. Mm-hmm. And then prepping for the game itself, that's about your ability to really be in the moment, working creatively with people and listening and having that mercurial ability to switch from one thing to another.
And quickly, right?
Yes, with
because
agility.
like you said, there's a lot of lines that you need to do. I always feel like it's kind of like a marathon because there's a lot, but it's in a sprint. Yes, so it's like you're going very fast.
Yeah, for sure.
High intensity interval training.
Yes, exactly. That's the one.
Some kind of a CrossFit.
Yeah, exactly. Voiceover CrossFit.
Yeah.
I think that she hit the nail on the head. I think the preparation was having certain muscles like developed enough, especially on the adaptability. I think the way I interpret my job is I need to deliver what the person hiring me needs me to deliver on the turn of a dime. And there are times, again, it was so, it was just moment to moment of I would do my interpretation of a line and then Pierce would be like, okay, how about we love that, but we're going to do less aggressive, and I have to know what he means by that. And I need to know how to be less aggressive the next take. And he'll give me another word. He's like, how about a little bit more self-deprecating? I'm like, cool. Then I got to know what that sounds like. And then I got to deliver that. So that was like the listening part, I think, is being really receptive. I think actors have a really tough and awesome job is like offer your interpretation, have one ready. Like, oh, in my mind, Songbird she's a gritty, tortured, cocky, secret. Like these are things that I've assigned to her, and then I'll give my interpretation. I got to have that kind of in my body ready to go, and remember that from the last time. And it can be, there's weeks in between sometimes the last session. So you got to be able to like get into that zone again, have that interpretation. And then at the same time, if they tell you, no, that's not what we need for this scene. In this one, she's a lot more lost and she's not as hostile. She's feeling a little bit more despair. Then be completely receptive to switch everything and be like, okay, maybe the interpretation I had is not what is needed right now. And that was just all like really a development. And just to see the bits and pieces of Cyberpunk that I did from looking on YouTube and things like that, just to understand the vibe, like to be able to read this artistic creation is not daisies and roses. So it would be wrong for me to walk and be like, hi, I'm Songbird. Like, it's just not good, and find.
That's a spy.
Yes, exactly.
Totally. Don't trust her.
This one, exactly. Don't trust her.
Can I ask you a question? Like, you're like, no. So, have that point of view. That helped me a bit. And I just had to kind of work with the info I had and remember the description that they had. and see the Venn diagram. I don't know if this is what you do, but it's kind of like even with characters that might have already existed, say Shakespeare, right? There's like this version of Midsummer Night's Dream, and I played Helena for class. I'm like, well, this is my version of Helena. This is Minji's version, because I have the same kind of spunk and the same go-getter attitude, but I'm also, this is how we're different. And you have to kind of be able to identify that as quickly, but take your time too, and then see, this is where I have the same grit as Songbird. I have the same determination as her. And I've been through hard things and I have despair. So I can tap into that and then decide, okay, I can also be really spunky and optimistic. And that's not so much her. And just kind of leave that at the door. And you should be able to do that.
A follow-up question actually to this one. Sometimes in between sessions, do you have some kind of reflections of like, oh, I need to deconstruct the character and maybe look for some sort of inspiration? Like, for example, you said determined, cocky, some sort of the character, you have a picture already in your mind. And do you look sometimes for the inspiration, or did you, for a Songbird in any other movies or any other game that could inspire you or maybe give you some kind of creative boost? I'm wondering if you do, because animators do very often. And I'm wondering how about that in your case?
Absolutely. I think that's the fun part of being an artist, is you're just a sponge to everything. And it's not even just other pieces of art, just life. When I meet people, like, for example, I was raised in Silicon Valley. I'm around tech is my entire universe. A lot of my friends work in it. So I'm always pulling from the smart Alex, smart asses, whatever. But they are very highly confident in what they can do. And what they can do it is altering our world as we know it. And so I tap into even friends' personalities, and then I'll see something on television or film or whatever, a commercial even, I was like, oh, that's her, or that's that part of her. And I really submerge myself into characters I play. That's the fun of it. And so everything will remind me of some part of whatever I'm working on, Songbird or otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because characters seem to have their own rhythm, their own pace of delivery, and Rogue is she's quite laid back. She's quite slow.
I love her.
Super confident.
She's so confident.
I'm not rushing for anything.
And I find that so fascinating. Like, where does she get the confidence to let the world come to her? That kind of thing. I'm so not like that. But every now and then you come across somebody who is like that, and you're like, wow. Well, okay, I'm going to just observe you for a little bit. And it could be a real person, or it could be a character in a film or something like that. And I do find that really fascinating. And it's so interesting to me, why people are the way they are, and why do they do the things they do? I mean, there's this psychological...
What motivates them,
Yeah, exactly. There's this psychological exploration of people that I'm sure we all find fascinating, that drives us to sort of create the characters that we create and that we discover in these games. So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I know it's not my place, but I'm going to step over that boundary.
Perfect.
And I'm going to ask you, what do you like? What is it for you that draws you to certain actors? What is it that actors do in games that makes your job easier? What is it that they do that maybe makes your job more difficult? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, please.
We want the gossip.
Again, this is our masterclass. I want to have a notebook.
Because to be honest, the things that I do in the booth, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is just been I don't know, it's just what I think I should be doing. Yeah. But I haven't really had many opportunities. I'm starting to have that now, actually, to ask game developers, what would you like me to do? What's going to make your life easier? And then I'll do it. So tell us what that is.
Okay. I'm gonna start then. It's a very good question. And as Burza already mentioned, I used to be an animation director. So of course, I used to be in the process of picking up the voices, kind of assigning them to particular characters, and very often I have a very kind of vivid and pretty straight picture the way I see particular character, what I need from this character based on the story in an animation, and I'm looking always for, first of all, and probably it's gonna be cliche or maybe obvious, but I'm looking for, first of all, personality in the voice and the texture. Because for the animator, for example, what is really important is the rhythm. Because if there's no rhythm in VO, then the performance, my performance, will be even. And I would love performance to have at least 3 type of beats, which should be kind of slow, kind of medium, and sometimes fast. And then it makes me and makes animators' life, and of course, in the end, the outcome, the performance way more entertaining and way more appealing.
Unbelievable, also.
Unbelievable, of course. Yeah, exactly. So I'm looking for this texture, this character that is in the voice, and when I have this, then I'm probably start asking myself some other questions, and then probably we meet and we talk, and I ask for variety of emotions, let's say. But this is what I'm looking for, especially here at CDP. When characters are super well, then deeply developed, those are living and breathing characters. You can tell even by the community how crazy they are about Songbird, about Rogue, about Jackie. They get to know Jackie for a few quests because he died, right? But there's a huge like Reddit, threads about Jackie and in my opinion, like that's why we're very picky very often when it comes to voice acting, because those characters are living kind of around us, and this is one of the most beautiful things in a thread that I really love, and that it's very we treat it super seriously. It's not just acting, it's not just a character. Those characters are bringing some emotions, and then we get community letters from people that are like super appreciating, let's say, some choices, some consequences that we believe that we kind of create with creating together these experiences. We are changing lives and changing perspectives, and kind of encouraging people to going out of the comfort zone, look around also, and those products are more than entertaining products. So yeah.
It's interesting because we were talking a little bit about this prior to recording today, and you were saying how you make acting choices based on what you hear in the voice, and that's fascinating to me because Damien Goodwin, who is actually my performance director in Returnal, I was talking to him about voice acting, and he said, you can hear somebody looking, you can hear when you look at somebody with your eyes in the voice. Obviously you can hear a smile and all that because that changes things. And what you said to me made me feel like, yes, as actors, you must hear the physicality, you must hear the facial expressions, everything in the voice, because actually that informs then what you do. And that was so interesting to hear you talk about the rhythms and slow, medium, fast, like the way, because we do that in real life. There's sometimes when we're really pensive about something, and then we think, oh, and I figured it out, and then you just rattle things off. And that's what we do. And it's, deconstructing things is so interesting in a way, because I think as humans, we just do what we do, right? But when it comes to that moment where we're replicating what humans actually really do, it can be very complex.
It's hard to replicate something.
It's hard to replicate, isn't it? It's a weird thing. Like, because
and you definitely hear, like animator, I can even say for myself, like I kind of squint my eyes and I see emotions through your voice acting, because like after hours of playing with the facial performances, and which is based on facial action coding system finally, and we know kind of what kind of muscles are triggered when you are really smiling, or you are faking, or when you are really angry or excited. And we kind of hear this, and we kind of know how you even pull your muscles subconsciously to deliver the emotions. So when you really like close your eyes and listen to VO, sometimes it can make you like mental, because I remember days when I've been like working on some kind of a performance, and I was listening to line for like 12-second line for like a week all the time, and playing with this VO, and like even when you of course it's obvious, but when you place a VO on the animation timeline, you see those bumps and stuff, so you can recognize, also you connect the dots, and you know that this is real anger, and then the funny thing is that there is this kind of exercise in the animation world that when you do like some cinematic performance, you kind of study acting, then you actually pick some kind of a VO. You don't even know the movie. You don't even the less you know, the better, because you're kind of experimenting. And it's a cool exercise when you actually pick the VO, animate something, you record yourself, you do the performance and stuff, and then you make a shot, and then in the very end, you find the VO, the movie, the actor, actress, and then you compare your performance to the one in the movie. And it's crazy sometimes how close they are matching together.
Sure.
It's unbelievable sometimes, really.
It's so cool to hear you talk about that.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating. And
I love learning this.
I mean, it's interesting because when I coach voice actors for an audition, or I'm teaching them how to voice act, I always feel that the moment I know that they're being successful in their voice acting when, in my mind's eye, I see the character. I see an image of the character. And to me, that means that they've really honored the specificity, the truth of it. And they're really delivering, a fully fleshed out character, because even though it's just a voice, it arrives in my mind's eye as a fully complete sort of character. And I think that's... I'm blabbling on.
No, it's good.
No, it's
okay,
good.
I
It's
just
really
want to
good.
say
It's
one
really
more
good.
thing. So, in film and TV, actors really understand like camera skills, right? So at the end of the scene, I might, look away and I won't blink and that sort of thing, to give the editor a great place to sort of cut. Exactly. And maybe this is something that would be good for voice actors to really think about. We're not thinking about the editor, of course, but perhaps we're thinking about the animator. What's going to be good for the animator in terms of my delivery of this piece? Should I pause here? Should I speed this bit up? Should I get really quiet? Should I be because to think about it in terms of the generosity that we can provide for you, slowly going mental, listening to the same sentence over and over again for a week, then I think a lot of actors would find that incredibly appealing.
Yeah.
Because I think we aim to please, and I think we love that can be part of our skill base too. And to provide that for,
It's a very good question and great task, I would say, because, as an animator, sometimes we have very long scenes, and there are some choices, right, that player needs to make, and what is really a challenge sometimes for an animator is that, you know how it is. You enter the dialogue with some particular emotion. There's a conflict most often, of course, it should be, and you live with some emotions. And the thing is that there's always this kind of arc in every scene. And what is really problematic for an animator is that when sometimes, let's say, the player takes some time to choose the dialogue, and then let's say again the VO and the character starts talking, and the character is not, let's say, following the same emotion, the same texture of the voice, and sometimes it makes me or animator it forces to, let's say, change even the pose or change the expression, when, for example, sometimes it's really necessary to keep boiling the same emotion or going extremely, you know what I mean? So keeping the same rhythm, the texture, remembering like, what did I leave before to really very mindfully start with the next line. I think that is like this kind of ceiling part, like, that would be definitely beneficial kind of for the process while animating the character.
I also feel like player choices kind of play into that, because sometimes you can have a character go from one emotion to another like instantly. And when you're recording those lines and there's multiple outcomes, and the character can be likes what the player chose, or dislikes that choice, or is, I don't know, let down by that choice, or is now mad or sad. And playing with those emotions, it just makes it so difficult.
And for animator, what really counts, the very first thing is like, okay, what's the context here? I'm gonna animate through the prism of that context. But then what it really actually makes scene running and emotion is a subtext. So as Burza just mentioned, the player can choose, and let's say, let's say the Songbird, for example, is angry at the beginning, and I'm trying to calm you down. Yeah. But you were angry the primal, the first emotion in that scene was anger. And let's say after a few seconds, when I'm pulling the strings and redirecting your emotions because I want to be a friend of you, for example.
Yeah.
And then I want to please you or whatever, then probably I calm you down a little bit, but the subtext, the anger is still there. So I can imagine that having this in mind, the way I'm gonna please you, that it's not gonna be smile in a way you would, let's say, being very chilled.
Just being happy and relaxed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like
nothing happened.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm smiling after being angry. That's a different smile.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Completely different.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is it. And for animator, of course, it's very, very important because they're setting up the scene. There's like there's characters, there's a body language, there's a facial expressions, there's all surrounding the moment. And so they're connecting the dots and trying to find the best possible compromise. And the voice is a huge part here, like huge, because generally, you are in the zone playing VR, but the character, the flesh, is actually only a catalyst. Yeah, and and then you have the voice that actually express the moment, express emotions, and that's the thing. The most important thing. The body language actually follows it, right? It's just what happens in face, what happens in the voice. This is something that player really relate with, and the body just I think follows it. So
I experienced that in what I was learning on the job with the continuity, because I, as a filmmaker, on camera, I'm one of those viewers that is really obnoxious about like that wasn't filmed the same day. That her hair is different, whatever. And I'll catch that because that breaks the suspension of disbelief where you're in it and all of a sudden something just like they're completely in two different emotional places.
In games, it ruins your immersion
exactly
totally, because you
it's
see
just you're out. You're out, right? So I was really impressed by just the sheer volume of lines. I mean, from my side, I won't reveal like the secrets, but we're looking at all these different lines, and then at every moment, it's like a puzzle, trying to figure out where were we last, which version of that last place, because, there's multiple versions of the same scenario. And so to understand the emotional stakes, okay, from the last one, it was that, but in that one, we're sad, but also in physical pain. So I had to learn how to clock that in real time. And I did appreciate, there were retakes or pickups where I had to revisit that to remember, okay, we're coming down off of a really crazy psychotic moment, and you're not just fine all of a sudden, you're fine, but you're fine off of this traumatic event. And so I did experience that in the voice, and that's what I think elevates a project. Like I say, the level of care and specificity that goes into a creative work and the collaboration that's required to do it is so painstaking and so tedious. And you're like, oh my God, I don't want to care. But that's what makes all the difference. Because when you do care and you demand that level of execution, it changes the product, it changes the experience, because it's all in the details that makes the person who's experiencing it, the player, believe it. They're not taken out of it.
Just makes it real. Makes it really tangible real.
Yeah. And that to me, as a noob and not knowing Cyberpunk, it was incredibly impressive, because I was like, I love this. Even though I don't know anything about games, this is my first, the level of specificity, I was like, this is excellent work. This is what creates excellence, is being that demanding in a way. And it wasn't demanding of you have to do this. It's demanding of no, we need to do this. This is what's required to have a good product. And I loved it. So I was like, that forces me in a good way as an actor to rise to that challenge. Because there will be people like, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like, who cares, you know? But like, no, my job is like, no, we got to get this done right. Let's do it. And I was exhausted, but I was so game. I was like, this is crazy that I'm like so physically spent, but I'm like, we got to go again. Good. What do you need? You know, because I was like, my body's like, I need to lay down. Just screaming for the last or whatever. Yeah, it was intense, but it was so fun.
Yeah, it must be tiring for like the whole body. Like you're in a booth, you're recording these things, and you're always standing most of the time. And you're acting. You're pretty much feeling those emotions, but in a, let's say, controlled state, but uncontrolled in some sense. And you know, you're getting tired because it's a lot. It's a roller coaster. And Songbird is a great example. Like she goes on a like roller coaster of different emotions, and like capturing all that stuff, it just must be like, she's like, geez, I need to sit down now and take a breather because it's a lot to take in. Right?
I cried a couple, like after I would leave. For me as an actor, I love going to the dark place in terms of like, I've lived through hard things and it feels cathartic and therapeutic to be able to put that somewhere. I don't know if that's how you feel about some of the work that you've done.
I totally agree
but
with you.
But it felt like a release of like, I get to relive, but the crazy thing is your body doesn't recognize, you're just using your imagination, but in your body, it's like you just went through something traumatic. So with full acceptance of that, knowing that going in, but like giving myself space after, I had to learn that. Because I would get in my car after a 4-hour session and I just like, I feel fulfilled as an actor. I'm like, this is like the most badass job ever. But at the end, I just like, I needed a few hours sometimes to just regroup. And I'm the kind of person, well, previously, that I want to just jump right into the next thing. I'll get into another meeting or like hang out with a friend. And I had to learn through this that
you need a breather.
I need a breather. And I would get in my car and just start crying. I was like, that was a lot. But then also feeling
CrossFit voice acting.
Yeah. It's a new term we coined today.
Super intense. Super intense.
Yeah. But it's still fulfilling. Even like I'm not saying that in a complaining way. I'm like, that's the cost of it, that I get to still do like the job of this is what dreams are made of, you know? So I'm like, yeah, I'll cry in my car. It's fine. It's okay.
Nobody said.
Yeah.
Like
this is actually that you mentioned. This is something that introduced me to voice acting and started to appreciate it as an art. Was the first time when I learned about it because I, of course, as a kid, consumed cartoons and also animated series. And my favorite animated series was Batman, the animated series, I think was for a lot of people. And I remember listening to the voice of Kevin Conroy as a kid because I watched it in English, and then Mark Hamill as the Joker. And when I got older, I started listening to podcasts and stuff like that. And I learned from that point that Hamill did the voice for the Joker. And I was like, but that's Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
Like, holy shit, how can that guy from this go to that? And then I saw a recording where he was saying like, and you know, I was in traffic in my car and I was like doing the voice and acting, and there were people like in other cars like passing by and looking at me. He's like, is that guy mental or something? It's like something wrong. Like, yeah, maybe I should call the police.
I'm an actor.
Yeah. But it's like, it's incredible because it's so hard for us to imagine like the lengths you need to go to become these characters, and you really like they become part of you. So my next question is, do these characters stay with you? Especially, I think it's a question for you because, I mean, Celine in Returnal, incredible character. Diana Burnwood in Hitman, also incredible. And these are characters which are very distinct, and they stay in the imaginations of players and gamers. And do they also stay and become part of you? And do you take this as some type of, I don't know, baggage, and you take it and introduce it to the next character that you're working on?
That's a really interesting question. I do think there's some residue of a character that sort of, you know, stays with you and travels with you a little bit. And I do feel, you know, sometimes I will have occasion to watch, you know, a game or play a game or, you know, watch a cutscene or whatever that I'm in. And I immediately tune into that character and I start to think about, and I start to play it. Like I'm still sort of working on Rogue, and I'm still working on Celine. They're still in me, and it's funny how it just they just come up, with the slightest little kind of like knocking on the door. They're like, "Hello, here I am. I'm back."
Hi.
Yeah, and I think your point was so interesting about taking the time to recover from the things that these characters go through, because it does affect you, and it can sort of creep up on you, the impact of the things that they go through in their journeys. And yeah, I think actually, funny enough, one of the characters that really stayed with me a lot was Karen Bowman in Ghost Recon, because she's in Bolivia, she's dealing with the drug cartels, she's exposed to incredible violence and personal loss. And she was so invested in that story. And then at the end, she's completely betrayed by the CIA and realizes actually that money wins out every time, and the American government actually has an interest in keeping these cartels going. And I just was so invested in her journey, and then she loses it all. And I felt this real sense, strong sense of injustice in my whole body. And of course, these are things that do go on in the world, right now, all the time. And then also with Celine, because she had such profound mental health issues and real, heavy duty trauma, I was very conscious of the fact that, yes, I was carrying some of her with me. And yes, I had to really make sure that I separated myself from her in particular. Rogue and Diana, I don't know, I love both of them so much. And they didn't cost me. They both energized me, because that's the other thing that can happen too. You get really it's just so much fun to be these characters, and it feeds you and it really nourishes you in a way. So,
but but Returnal, talking about the genre, you said before, it's it's a roguelike kind of a game. So you simply torture your character. It's like a constant loop of die. Yeah. And I loved your performance there. So it was really amazing. And I'm not actually a big fan of roguelikes, for example. I have a few that I love, for example, Hades and actually Returnal, those two. But I was actually thinking about if you are going through so much torture, I was thinking how did you really think much about the genre of the game that roguelike gives you a never-ending cycle of pain, and
but you feel like you're a little bit better every time.
Exactly,
better every time. It's pain, but there's a little bit of hope there.
Exactly,
there's a light in the tunnel.
That's the hope. That's the hope. You are getting better and better and better, which is great, but at the same time, it was sometimes I felt sorry for her, shit again. I'm waking up in the ship and then
here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again.
But isn't that like life right now? I'm like, okay, here we go again. I mean,
it's a roguelike, yeah.
We've been going through it. We've been going through it for the last few years, if we haven't, and I think it's a crazy, profound thing to see how the fictional things, the things that are conveyed through make-believe, the reason I think we're drawn to them, at least for me, is because it mirrors something in my real breathing life. And I think I think it's a great question, because what I have to do as an actor is be able to get in and get out. That's my job, is to be able to compartmentalize, and to a degree, in a healthy way, to say that is Songbird, that's not me. There's parts where we blend and parts where we don't, and this is the job, and I got to do it, and now I'm not in the job, and now I got to go get my gas and go, call my mom and do, gotta do what I gotta do. And that's a different muscle that I develop. But I do think maybe that's just more intense or frequent as an actor, that we're volunteering to jump into these other beings and live a full life in them. And that's a tremendous privilege and a joy. I also liken it to, I think Meryl Streep said it. She's one of my idols. But I think she was pointing out everyone is an actor. We are all different versions of self, depending on what time we're talking to you, or who you last interacted with, or who you're speaking with. If you're speaking to your doctor or a judge or a police officer or whoever, we're all different versions of self. So I say that's something that we're all doing, is learning how to manage this version of us. and learning how to embrace it to a degree and accept it to a degree and then let go of it. It's just, I think it's hyper developed in an actor, or I think it's necessary to be hyper developed in an actor, because if you don't, it can cost you greatly of like not being able to separate. And it is a slippery slope. It's hard to like not get caught up in the despair or like that feeling. It can be addictive sometimes. And I don't judge anybody for that. It's a human experience. And even in your mind, you can go to really dark places. And if that's what the character needs from you, the project requires from you, it's a very generous thing to be willing to go there. But then it's also, there can be a cost. So I'm still learning. This was my first game. But there's even like random characters from like short films that I've done that still stick with me. I've played some like very like, what's the word? Just for example, I did a student film where there's these 3 guys and they're all just talking about this drug lord that they're so scared of, and like they're college students and they're like dealing drugs and whatever. And at the end, you find out the drug lord is me. And I'm just like, hi, what's up? But I take no shit. So like you have to believe like I could be the drug lord. And so that was a fun, I love having like a twist in stories. Yeah. So that character, for some reason, this was years ago, but that one I was like, I am the secret drug lord.
That's why they didn't catch you. Man.
I know.
Perfect spot.
Perfect spot.
Consider that as a side job.
Yeah, you know. We'll neither confirm nor deny that. But different characters will definitely leave an impression, and I try to have fun with it and just remember, like we were saying, it energizes me. Yeah. Like, what are the parts of Songbird that the tragic and non-tragic parts of her, how smart she is, how cunning she is, and then to remember her storyline, I think, is very tragic because her strengths are also her weaknesses, and she has blind spots, and she had, just her guilt and the survival in her drove her to do a lot of things that she was not happy to do. And that's a very real thing. So, you take what you can and you spend enough time. I journal a lot. I'll be like, well, today.
But it must be the same for developers too, because I mean, actually actors come in at sort of the 11th hour in the process, and you've been, living and breathing this game for years, usually prior to that. And so what's the impact on you? Like, you must have these moments of really carrying, the story with you, and how is that process of letting go or maybe separating yourself from what happens in how do you do that?
I mean, it's a very
yourself?
grim, Cyberpunk is brilliant and enthralling, but it's also it's very dark.
Yeah.
Yes. How do you guys, when you're
It's
immersed
very
in
dark.
that?
And we have to only deal with our own story, but you're dealing with
Everybody's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like dark stuff in CDPR though,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's our bread and butter.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why you have a basketball
As you
court
said
out
about-
there. It's like, I have to play
Get the
basketball
endorphins and
lift some weights.
Yeah.
But this is life also, right? As I said before, like life also is dark. We have a few examples of people like switching their tasks after some time because they were so tired after, let's say, being there in this moment, in this quest for, let's say, months. And it is depressive sometimes, and they need some change. And we try to, of course, adapt and be open about this. But for example, talking about Cyberpunk, Evelyn lived in me for at least a year. And I was, whenever I thought about Evelyn, I felt bad, like, my God. And then I was kind of rationalizing, saying, yeah, but a femme fatale, kind of a noir, it had to happen, It's like that was the chaos fury. Sometimes it clicked, and that was from the very, I think so, that most players that know genre, and as soon as they meet Evelyn, they probably felt that she's going to end bad. Some people in this, like, some people live in a way that they make a pretty wrong calls. You know what I mean? It's all about life too, but it's depressive sometimes. And same with Jackie. I love Jackie so much. It's my favorite character. And even now when I'm saying it, I regret that we lost him. Oh my God! I know that story in it, and we make stories here. And it was necessary for a story to build a stakes and actually to make this whole thing really compelling and appealing and then meaningful. But it is, it's not a adventure game. Let me spend a few hours. Yeah,
we're not playing Mario. It's
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not sunshine and rainbows, and
he's constantly losing Peach.
Yeah, always.
Yeah,
and there's always Bowser that is always
so it's all
like making everything.
It's like imagine that he's like a roguelike too. Like he's constantly losing his the laugh. It's depressive,
Yeah.
Let him be happy.
It's all about perspective in these things.
Exactly.
Point of view.
So so developers definitely they live.
But you see it in the studio. Whenever we finish a big project, people take months off.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad that they do
clear
though.
their heads.
I think that's a great
because it's a
thing
lot.
to do.
You become like very, very invested in what you're working on. If it's a quest, or if it's a character, or if it's animation, whatever. Like the whole thing. When you see the product like come together, you're like, you appreciate it, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. But then it's also very taxing on the people, and you can really, really see it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that becomes so apparent. Like, at the award ceremonies, you see it all the time. They're on a game developer, the team's on the stage, and somebody bursts out in tears because it's the culmination. It's this moment of recognition of all the work that they've put in, and this huge sort of relief of arrival. And then also being recognized, which is super, super
also
important.
I feel like the immersion in games is something that is very important because you really become part of this world, and you're playing an active part in the game that you're playing, which makes it even more like you really feel the feelings and you really like are part of those emotions. And it's not something that you can like, I feel like whenever I'm watching something, of course it can have an impact on me if it's something that is relatable, or if like the characters are feeling something that I felt, or they're going through things which are similar to the things that I like went through. But in a game, I feel like it's elevated. It's even more because you're actually playing an active part. And sometimes, and especially in our games, I have this that, I make some choices and I get to consequences. And I'm like, shit, could I have done something different? Can I go back and take it back? Or should I even go back and do things differently to get a different outcome? Or was I supposed to get this outcome because of my choices? Were my choices correct? Were they wrong? It's like all these things start, going into your head and you're like, yeah, this is incredible because you actually need the time to digest it. Yeah.
It's been crazy to witness or like to hear people thinking about those things, at least for Phantom Liberty through Twitter. I've been on the receiving end of people thinking through all their consequences and their choices out loud to me. Yeah. I'm like, wow, it's just fascinating because that's what I do with anything that a book I read, an article, a podcast, good art, good conversation, good narrative drives thought within you to think of yourself. Would I have done the same thing? Oh, what do I think about how that person did that? And I love that with acting, that it has taught me tremendous empathy because when you go into a character, say somebody that is a villain or maybe not, I think that that's interesting with characters. Who's the hero or who's a villain is kind of dependent on who's on the other side of it. Mm-hmm. A hero could be a villain to someone and a villain could be a hero, and a villain to themselves is usually the hero of their own story. Mm-hmm. So it's taught me a lot to not judge and to have more perspective because I have to ask those to not judge a character I'm playing, the drug lord. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe she's, trying to help her family out. They're living in poverty. I don't know,
Breaking Bad story.
I mean, right,
exactly.
Right.
Totally.
And those are interesting layers and things that will peel back. And just to hear people work through those things as a result of the work that you've done. I kind of just also wanted what Jane was saying, like to praise all the developers. Like it is truly a tremendous feat. Like we are so honored. I'm sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of you, but I know it is an honor to be chosen and to be included in that. But I just need in this platform, in this space, like just praise the hell out of everybody who had their hands in this because just the little that I've seen with TV and film, I understand on that scale from the writers to the person who puts a picture on a wall. All of those things matter to make a world that you can get lost in, to feel the feelings. And I'll tell you, when I had, spoiler on Songbird, when she's gonna die, that path, I watched it and I started crying and it's me, but I didn't feel like it was me because
I have goosebumps now.
Yeah.
Because I remember that moment and I remember the quiet in the booth because they're creating this space for me to just to be in complete utter loss and despair. And I let myself go there, and I was so thankful because they made me feel safe enough to do that. That was a team. But they also gave me the words to say, and I had to turn it into something real. But then when I heard it, I was like, it didn't register in my head that was me.
Yeah.
I was watching a character be in the darkest moment of her life, pleading to just die and be let go, and to hear V's voice and the pain. And I heard both sides. I heard Jeremy's version and Gavin's version, and I'm just crying because the sound with what the sound effects of her being connected to all the, oh my God. And the music, it was just devastating. So that was I had chills of my body of I get to be part of this. And you guys and your teams are the one that created that. So it's just to give credit where it's due. We're talking so much about voice acting. I'm so grateful for that. It's wonderful. And it also needs to be, that is elevated. It's part of this tapestry of what's built by you guys.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It all comes together.
It all clicked.
Yeah.
That's not a coincidence. We all craft experiences and we deliver emotions. We want people to relate with and
experience them
exactly.
and live through them.
Then that's what it really counts in the end. The emotionals that we all together create and that's the beautiful part of it.
Yeah. Well done, you guys.
No, well done you. Well done you.
Yeah, that was actually the question that I wanted to kind of close everything off. Is there a moment where you actually get to experience the final product and you see it? Is it always something that you are okay, I love it? Or are you, okay, I've seen it come together, I did not expect this? Or is it a mixture of all these things? Or is it sometimes oh, maybe I could have done something different or better, or maybe not? Because it's also interesting, I think, from our perspective, to see how you kind of see the end product and how do you digest it?
That's a really interesting question. I would have to say kind of all of the above applies to me. There's times when I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's great. And not just in terms of my own work, but just in terms of how the whole thing comes together. And I love watching the trailer, the release trailer. I'm just oh my God, it's so exciting because it's always so
we get the same excitement here, don't worry.
Yeah, I just love that moment. And whether it explores my character or not, it's just great to see this is what this game is going to be about. I think the moments where I sort of feel gosh, I wish I could do that again is when there's dialogue happening and as your viewers may or may not know, we go into the studio and we don't work with each other. So if on the off chance Songbird and Rogue were in the same scene.
We're manifesting right now.
Yeah, we are. Hint, hint. Most likely I would be in London recording my lines and somebody else would be reading Songbird's lines, and then you would be in LA and vice versa. So we very rarely would ever have the chance to work opposite each other. And so when I hear work that I'm not happy with in games, it's usually because of that. Yeah. Because we spent so much of our time today talking about nuance and specificity and the things that humans do. And the reality of our ways of communicating is that we are so good at picking up on the minutia of the way somebody looks at you.
Playing off of each other, right?
Each other.
Yeah.
And so when actors don't get the chance to play off each other, I can sometimes hear that. I can hear it in my own performance, and I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I knew that the actor was going to say it that way, because I would have come back differently. And listening and responding is very key, fundamental element of acting. And as games are right now in terms of how they're recorded, we're not able to necessarily facilitate that with actors. And I totally understand why. Yeah. It has to do with budget. It has to do with, as I was saying, the 11th hour, the fact that, Minji's in LA and I'm in London. Yeah. And but I hope at some point we can sort of bridge that gap in a way, because I think games are already so sophisticated. I mean, I have to say I'm also amazed by what we can manage in this very deconstructed sort of mode. But I think as it just becomes more and more sophisticated, I hope that's one thing that we can work on, because I think it will elevate things even more than they already
make
are.
the performance even better.
Yeah.
The dots will connect.
Yeah.
Sure. It was funny when we're talking about developing characters. The beginning of when I recorded Songbird, again, when we're 9, I think I recorded over the course of 9-10 months in pieces. And so when I would hear back again, we're jumping all over the place in terms of story. So we're like, okay, we got to do some pickups, or we're going to revisit that scene where you're running away from XYZ. And I hear what I did like 6 months ago, and I was like, oh no. Because like 6 months later, I have such a deeper understanding and perspective on Songbird. And I'm like, Pierce, we got to re-record that. But I know we can't. But I'm like, so I got more confident in my portrayal of her. I had more confidence in knowledge of the process. But yeah, there's times I was like, can we just, we can't. Okay. But no, okay.
I tried.
And so I was like, I'm
We
the
we also cry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like, this is like, killing your babies, in the process. You have to let them
You
go.
have to go. Yeah.
It's like, my God.
Yeah.
It would be great to kind of still.
Yeah.
I feel like also us as and you guys as developers, if you ever had this chance of working on something until you're happy, I feel like games would not
It would
ever
never
come
get
out.
No,
They would never
nothing
be
would
made.
ever get
like
done.
never.
No, you're
Yeah.
right.
Because
So-
you always
Absolutely
want to do it different and better.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to put the, let's say, pen down and say
Exactly.
okay,
Yeah.
this is it. I'm good.
True.
That might be
So
the
true.
biggest challenge, I think. But and that's another muscle to develop. Just you have to call it and just say, okay, I did the best I could with what I had. Go.
Yeah,
this
and
is-
you're on a timeline, and
Yeah.
it's an
Everyone's on a
important
timeline.
timeline, and there's building blocks like you were talking. There's a lot of things that it feels like you're playing chess in like 3D, and there's multiple boards.
Yeah.
And all these things need to come together and like create this whole picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, you have this inner producer in you. Like I believe me too, and also executive. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
God, I hate this part, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to weigh you have to like calibrate, like how much is this going to mess up the project? Can we just, can we afford either time, money wise, like to
This happens a lot.
Yeah.
Can
So
we
that's
add a little bit more here, or maybe take away a little bit here and put here? No.
But that's a collaborative process. I've seen that in film where like your editors can step in and like, they fix problems that you didn't think could be solved.
Yeah.
And they just fix it with an edit. You're like,
magic.
how the hell did that
It's
happen?
magic.
Yeah.
It's
So that's a
incredible.
collaborative creative
Yeah,
process.
it's a sprinkle. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I think, there'll definitely be parts where I feel a little like, oh, I would have done a little bit different. But overall, super accepting and happy with what was. And the trailer, the first time, I have the moment, actually, I never shared it on social media because I didn't know when the right time would be. But I have my friend recorded me reacting to the trailer the first time I heard it.
Oh man,
And
that's gonna be amazing.
Nice.
I almost started crying because I was just like in complete. My whole body had chills. It was in a theater with other people. I was ready to watch a film at Tribeca Film Festival, and
Crazy.
someone texted me saying it's live, and I was like, shut up. And I just whipped out my AirPods and I'm listening and I'm just like shaking because I couldn't believe it was actually real. So it's those moments, they make a lot of things worth it, and you just learn to let go of the things that maybe were imperfect. It's fine. As long as people overall can receive it and be immersed, and you're just like, then it becomes its own entity. It becomes something outside of you.
Exactly.
So I'm learning a lot on this. This has been so much fun. I just appreciate it so much.
Amazing. And what a way to start. Like Songbird told me, she's an incredible character. Incredible.
She's well developed.
And you do such a great job with her.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was fun.
Incredible. I think this is where we put a pin in it, but I feel like we could go on for days.
Yeah,
It's
I
an
think so,
incredible conversation.
Yeah.
We should do this
Thank you so
again.
much for coming to the Answer podcast and having this discussion with us, because I feel like it all comes for us from a place of passion. And it's incredible to see that we all kind of thrive off of the same energy, and it's incredible.
Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Nice. Thanks a lot for tuning in into this very special episode of Answered Podcast, as you had guests from the outside world, but part of the family. And I'm super glad that we made it happen, because I learned, personally, I've learned a lot. And I hope you too, Burza, and hearing more about performance and voice acting from the behind the curtain. It was super refreshing and inspiring.
You could really feel the passion in the room and the excitement, and also just us coming together and talking about all the things that make the whole performance of a character come to life was incredible. And of course, this is only the beginning. We'll have more episodes coming in to you guys. Hopefully, we'll also have more guests from outside. So let us know what you're thinking about these episodes. If you're liking them, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. And we'll see you, of course, in the next episode.
See you.